What up? How's it going, everyone? I hope everyone has had a great week. PS5 and Xbox Series X are just around the corner. I love the idea of getting a brand new console as a gamer. Next gen graphics, better visuals, better quality, all that good stuff. Now, there's another side that perhaps is even bigger for me, which is these consoles are actually created for us developers around the world, for studios to actually create games. And both the tools and the dev kits, they call it, and also the specs that they come with the consoles. It's a work of both Sony and Microsoft listening to different development studios about what will be the tools that will make your life easier. I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that excites me as a developer, and I'm going to hopefully give you guys a little insight on how those tools actually can make developers around the world more creative, and hopefully it will actually excite you guys as much as it excites me. So, this is episode 42. Let's get to it. So let's talk about CPU, which is the first thing that I was very excited about. In all previous generations, in every single console, CPU is always something that was mentioned, as in like is much better, is twice as fast, 3 times as fast, all that good stuff. In this generation, it hasn't been mentioned so much, and I think it's because the leap from one generation to the other is not as big as it used to be. So just to compare, previous generations, PS4 and Xbox, they both had 8 cores, and they were at a much lower speed, but it was still 8 cores, and they could still handle a whole lot of power. I mean, when you see games like, The Last of Us 2 or Ghost of Tsushima, then you can see that, it carries a lot of power, those CPUs. The PS5 and the Xbox, they also have 8 cores. They have Zen 2 processors, which is considerably better, and they actually have 3.5 and 3.8 respectively. So still a big jump, but not as much as previous generations had, and I think this is why maybe people are not talking about it so much. So I don't think you're gonna get that next gen look and feel just by actually kind of comparing CPUs from Xbox and PS5, because I think they are very much the same-ish in comparison to if you actually get a new PC. There's much better CPUs out there. If this is not what is gonna make it next gen, what is it? So let's talk about SSDs. SSDs is the point or the thing that everyone is talking about right now, right? I mean, having fast SSDs and what can you do with it and how fast it is, and PS5 is faster than Xbox and vice versa and all that good stuff. But I think the current games that are gonna come out, or the first wave of games that are gonna come out on both consoles or either console, is probably still gonna have loading screens, which is the thing that everyone is talking about that is gonna eradicate it. And from a developer's perspective, I think the reason why that is gonna happen is because most developers nowadays are developing for old gen or current gen and next gen at the same time, right? And because of that, it's impossible for you to cater for 2 consoles, one with loading and another one without. I do think that the SSDs were gonna give you faster loading screens on the next gen, on the upcoming gen. I actually think that from a developer's perspective, game mechanics and innovative game mechanics are the things that get you excited, right? Cracking something that no one else has done before is something that actually makes you really excited. So nothing better than having a new generation of consoles with more power and more tools for you to actually take advantage of those opportunities and just really make it your own. Like, this is a feature that actually was implemented at first by this game. So I think one of the games that actually is taking advantage of that and actually are making this creative choice of using this SSD idea in the best way possible, I think, is Jak and Daxter. They integrated it within the game mechanic, right? So you have different worlds that you can jump from, and you can actually have one world here and then have a portal and jump to another world. There's no loading times, it's seamless, and that it's amazing to me. For those of you that have played God of War before, especially for the very first time, I don't know if you guys remember how creative and how advanced the idea of having no stops and you're having like a continuous story from the very beginning to the very end, and faking those loading screens within the gameplay, to me was magic, because every single game until then had loading screens and you have to wait until you go to the next section or until you load a whole bunch of stuff and then you can start playing. But this way is almost like Sony and Microsoft are giving you the tools to not even having to think about, like they're facilitating the developers out there to just use this no loading screens or this speed on the SSDs to make their game seamless. But how are people using these tools to make it creative? So that's what excites me, and I cannot wait to see what other developers do with that idea. Now, last but definitely not least, the feature that I am personally more excited as a developer, which is memory. So memory is something that you talk about all the time in development, is the number one feature that developers want the most, and you want as much as possible. You can never have too much memory. It's impossible. And especially as an animator, animations take a whole lot of memory to actually process, because they are really heavy on the disk or hard drive if you download it, right? So you have to actually account for a lot of the space that you have in your games. So that needs to download. And then once you load your game and you're playing it, you have to load those animations into memory so they can actually play out. So whenever you have a lot of animations happening in a game, sometimes they stutter, right? Sometimes you kind of like run out of memory, or like games crash on PC and all that stuff. And that's because animation is a very intensive, memory intensive process in an engine. So having more memory in a console means that you can play with more things. Now, this generation of consoles, these upcoming generations of consoles, they will have double the memory that the PS4 and the Xbox had in the current generation of consoles. And that to me is definitely the most exciting thing, because with double the memory means that you can have double the fun at trying to actually cram in as much animation with as much quality as possible. There's also this notion that maybe you guys are not aware. As a developer, once again, you talk about a lot, which is animation compression. When you develop a game, you actually kind of go ahead and do your animations at the highest quality possible, and that's how you see it most of the game. But halfway through the game, or maybe like getting close to the end, there's going to be a pass that you're going to have to do that is going to compress the animation quality so they actually fit within the disk or within the hard drive, and they actually have a certain size, a respectable size, so things don't bloat out and they'll become huge, right? But what it does is actually take a little bit of the quality that you had of the animations. So you always have to keep that in mind as you actually work in your animations, and to see how much can you push animation compression before you destroy your animation. When you have a lot of memory, all of a sudden that animation compression goes a little bit out the window, because you can put like high fidelity animations within game without having compression on your animations. So once again, awesome stuff to have a lot of memory in these new consoles. Now, I think that next gen feel that everyone is looking for, I don't think this time is going to come from the CPU, because that's basically the horsepower of the console. I don't think it's going to come from that. I think that final next gen look that you're going to get on new games coming up is going to come from a mix of creative use of the SSD, and also allowing the memory of the console to be used to the extreme, so to make sure that you actually kind of cram in as much as you can within those memory limitations, and you make your game look better than it was previously possible, because now you actually have more room to play, more memory to actually load things into. So I think that's where the next gen look or feel or play is going to feel like on these new consoles. I don't think it's going to be looks or graphics. It's going to be much more like the creative side of things, and how much you can cram in to a disk or to a hard drive to make sure that you actually have a nice experience. Those three things that I talked about, CPU, SSDs, and memory, to me at least, are the things that get me more excited about these new consoles. Obviously, looks, ergonomics for the PS5 controller, all that good stuff, nice. I hope the consoles are not as loud as well. That's the gamer in me talking. But I think those three things are going to be the things that people are going to be enjoying the most, and they're going to be taking the most leverage in the development world side of things. Those games that other developers put out, and how they actually expand the limitations, they keep pushing boundaries. Those things are the things that actually make me inspired for me to actually do my job better. Now, I have to actually kind of add a little something to here. The fact that I mentioned these two consoles, PS5 and Xbox, that really doesn't reflect on my daily job that I'm doing right now. I'm talking here as my personal experience based on the stuff that I worked before now, not really what I'm working right now. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say, is that based on my previous experience, I think these three things are going to be the things that people are going to be looking forward to the most as a developer, and I definitely am looking forward to them, to actually kind of play with them at some point in the future. So I hope that actually highlights some of the stuff that goes behind the scenes in games, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment down below and tell me, why are you excited for these next gen consoles specifically? It doesn't matter if you're a gamer or a developer. Drop a comment down below, let me know, let's get chatting. And that's all I had for this week. As always, have a great rest of the week. Stay well, stay safe. Peace.